In this video, I'm going to create a Java project named person details. Here we try to access the person detail from the MySQL database management system. To access the database, we will create a specialized class person.dao which query the database and retrieve the result. We also create a person class to the instance of which we gonna assign the return row from the database. First, let's create a Java project person details. Next, we create a required package. One to hold the application specific interfaces and the classes. Say com.person.details and create the class person in it. We will use the instance of person class to hold the return row from the database. The table structure in the database have two columns, ID and name. We create variable ID of int type and name of string type with its getter and setter. To display the populated person object using sysout, we also override the toString method to display the ID and name of the person. Next, create a package XML to keep the spring bean.xml file and copy the empty bean.xml file which I have on my local system with the required namespaces. Create a package for the client where we create a client class showPerson with the main method inside it. Next, we need a DAO class which gonna take parameter required to fire query as input and return the required result. For that, we create a class person.dao. To use the Hibernate template of Spring, we have to include all the required jars to the project. So I'm gonna add all the Spring jars with the common logging.jar file and the MySQL connector jar to communicate with the MySQL database. Create a variable of class Hibernate template with its setter method. Create a method say getPerson by Hibernate which gonna communicate with the database by using the Hibernate template. This time we will use the ID field as an argument to the query for user in order to retrieve the person details. So pass the ID as an argument to the method and use the Hibernate template get method to retrieve the person details. Those who are aware of Hibernate, they know that Hibernate requires the Hibernate mapping file in order to map the fields from person class to column of person table in the database. Again, I have an empty Hibernate mapping file with necessary namespace on my local system. Name it person.hbm.xml. That's the naming convention followed by Hibernate user. In the Hibernate mapping tag, I will set the attribute package with the package structure of person class file com.person.details. Now creating the mapping for the person class. For that, first create a tag class with attribute name set to class name person inside it. Define a tag ID with attribute name set to name of property in the class file, that is ID. Declare the generator class for ID as native so that template take care of best approach to populate the ID. Next, map the property name of the person class to the name of a column in the database. Now we have to declare a bean first. We have to create a data source bean to which we pass the necessary details to connect to database, and if it succeeds, it's gonna return the connection object. We create a data source bean of class single connection data source and set the required parameter to connect to database like driver class name to MySQL driver class, that is com.mysql.jdbc.driver, URL to URL of the database server, JDBC MySQL localhost test, user to root, and password empty. Those who are aware of Hibernate, they knew for Hibernate we require a session factory object. Following the same trend, Hibernate template have a variable session factory that needs to be populated. To populate this variable, Spring have a specialized class local session factory bean. So we create a bean with name session factory of class local session factory bean and populate the property data source of it with the data source bean we defined above. Populate the property mapping resource of it with the list of mapping resource. In our case, we have only one, person.hbm.xml. We need to set some of the Hibernate specific properties like dialect, which is mandatory. In order to use the capability of Hibernate ORM tool, we need to add the required jar files. Now we can add the MySQL dialect to the Hibernate properties. Once session factory bean is declared, we can set the session factory to the Hibernate template. For that, first we declare a bean name Hibernate template of class Hibernate template and set the property session factory of it with the session factory bean we declared above. At last, we create a bean of person.dao class by name person.dao and set the property Hibernate template of it with the bean Hibernate template we declared above. So every setup to access the database using Hibernate template is done. Now all we have to do is to access the person.dao bean declared inside the bean.xml file using the Spring Core container. Create a reference variable of application context, populated the instance of class path XML application context, and pass the path of bean.xml file. Use the factory to get the bean %dow from the container. Assign it to the class %dow. Call the getPerson by Hibernate method of it we defined. Pass the ID of the person you are looking for. In our case, it is 1234. And at last, sys out the return person from the database. Let's check if the database server is running or not. Yes, it is. In our database, we have two rows. Let's look for the row with ID 1134. Executing the client code. Okay, exception. We need to set the property suppress close of the data source to true. Okay, let me execute it once again. Yes, it's working fine.